I read an article on Dorian Yates' training, and Dorian Yates is I love Dorian Yates, but his version of high intensity training is bad.
Welcome to Corporate Warrior, the podcast that brings you the best advice on how to improve your health, optimize performance, and maximize productivity. With your host, Lawrence Neal.
This podcast is brought to you by HitUni.com. HitUni.com are a provider of amazing online courses for high-intensity training qualifications. HitUni comes highly recommended by the best in the field, including Body by Science co-author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, and trainer and founder of Bay.com, Drew Bay. It was founded by my friend, author, and longtime personal trainer Simon Shawcross, who's also been a guest on the podcast. Simon has 15 years experience training clients and has supervised over 15,000 high-intensity training workouts. Using knowledge from experts like Skylar Tanner, Dr. James Steele, Dr. Ellington Darden, HitUni is a goldmine for learning everything to do with high-intensity training. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace. There's online support and a discussion forum where you can share ideas and ask for help. To learn more about high-intensity training and improve my own results, I started their personal trainer course. The content is amazing, the courses are really easy to follow, and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one. I should also mention there is a DIY course. So this is the course for you if you're not necessarily a personal trainer, but you want to learn more about high-intensity training and how to implement it for maximum benefit in your own exercise regime. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's HITUNI.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, pick your course, and enter the coupon code CW10 for 10% discount. Thank you for your support. Hi guys, I am Lawrence Neal and welcome to another episode of Corporate Warrior, the podcast that teaches you how to optimize your high-intensity training protocol and your high-intensity training business to help you achieve your health, fitness, and business goals. My previous guests include people like Dr. Ted Naiman, Ben Greenfield, Tim Ryan, Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, Dr. Jeremy Lenicky, Noah Kagan, Luke Carlson, and many, many more. My next guest is Jay Vincent. Jay is a nationally recognized personal trainer, health coach, and professional fitness model. He's the owner and primary trainer at BioFit. Jay's mission is to instruct highly effective, time-efficient, and safe exercise for people of all ages, goals, and physical conditions. He's been featured on many popular podcasts. He's been on Corporate Warrior twice before. He's also been featured in magazines and has modeled for popular athletic companies such as Under Armour and Muscle Tech. Jay's a very interesting case. He has the rare combination of great genetics for building muscle, but also a sharp intellect and appreciation for high-intensity training. Here is still a relatively low-profile exercise protocol, so we need every proponent to shout about it. I see people like Jay as a Trojan horse for high-intensity training marketing. It's people like him with his type of physique that are going to get the protocol noticed and start making people pay more attention. In this episode, we focus primarily on high-intensity training, Jay's specific routine, his frequency, his volume, his exercise selection, how he motivates himself, how to improve grip strength, his advice for losing stubborn body fat, diets for hard gainers, and much, much more. So this part 3 is really more focused on training and diet specifically, since in our part 2, we mainly focused on business and didn't get around to talking about how Jay's approaches and views on exercise and specifically high intensity training have evolved since we last spoke. There are some really interesting insights in this episode, which I won't spoil now, but it will make you realize just how important genetics really are. I don't say that to dishearten you, but to liberate you from obsessive, unrealistic goals in relation to muscle gain and fat loss. So for all of the show notes and links for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org and please subscribe to the podcast, whatever platform you use, whether it's Overcast or iTunes. Please remember to subscribe because it really, really helps me out. And don't forget to hang around at the end of this episode to figure out how you can get weekly updates from me in terms of new podcasts and also a free ebook with 6 transcripts of some of my top guests. And now, ladies and gents, I give you the one and only Jay Vincent. All right, Jay, welcome back to Corporate Warrior. Appreciate you taking the time to jump onto the show for a third time.
Thank you, Lawrence. Glad to be here again.
Cool. So as we were discussing before we started recording officially, we wanted to focus this episode on high-intensity training, diet, and kind of focus on those areas because I think in the last episode we decided to just focus on business so that we get the most out of that area. So I figured we could kick this one off with your current workout, which I know you put on YouTube recently, but just talk us through your existing protocol, exactly how it looks in terms of the details. So, the exercises, the rest period, the cadence, all of that type of stuff.
Yeah, sure. So when we last spoke, I enjoyed and preferred more of a split routine. I kind of go back and forth, but recently, due to opening my own studio, I'm far too busy to dabble in a split routine. So what I've begun to do is, after taking about probably a 2 to 3 week layoff from training, I felt my biceps tendons were sore and they weren't exactly recovering. So I took a break. And then when I resumed training, I just began running through a full body workout again. And so far, I'm doing a full body routine once every 7 or ish days. I don't really keep track. What I do is, I allow enough recovery time, and if by the end of the night or the end of the work day, or maybe in between some clients, if I feel that I've got the energy and the motivation to train, I will train. But I don't obsess over it. If I take longer in between training sessions, that's fine. If I trained 2 or 3 days ago and I want to train again, I just do it. So I kind of, I vary the frequency. So far it's, it could be anywhere from 5 to 10 days. So, it's very basic, a horizontal press, a vertical press, a horizontal pull, such as a seated row, and a pull down or torso arm type exercise. And for the legs, hamstring curl, leg extension, leg press, something for the biceps, something for the triceps, and maybe abdominals if I feel like it. So, with a full body routine, I always start with the legs. What I like to do is start with leg extension. So I'll do a little bit of a warm up, just very lightweight, just kind of get my nervous system primed. Then I move on to a heavier resistance and shoot for about a minute to a minute and a half under muscle failure or to muscle failure. Then I move pretty quickly through exercise to exercise, but I don't make it, a sprint. I don't move as quickly as possible. I give myself enough time to mentally recover, sort of physically recover, and prepare for the next exercise. So what I like to do is train the hamstrings with a seated hamstring curl to failure, 1 set, leg extension, 1 set to failure, and then a breakdown set for the leg press. And, there's been a lot of controversy on whether or not advanced techniques are useful. But I still prefer a breakdown set when it comes to a leg press because I feel as though I have a little bit more left. And what I feel, I think I may be chasing the metabolic byproducts of the leg press, and I want to feel a very, very intense burn. And sometimes when I get to just muscle failure, even though it's probably enough to stimulate a response, I feel as though I crave a little more. So a lot of the times I start with a heavier weight, go for about 8 to 12 repetitions, drop it about 30 or 40%, drop it again. And that's the leg routine. And then I move over to 1 set to failure a little more quickly on all the upper body machines, and then finish off with abs. So for the most part, I just keep it there. I vary the time under load. Sometimes I'll choose a heavier load, go to about, 45 seconds to a minute time under load. Sometimes I'll do 2 minutes. And what I try to do is, I'm at the point where honestly, I'm not really keeping records for progress because I know I have intuitively I feel I'm progressing, but it would be almost too small to measure on a week-to-week basis. So what I'm doing is just creating variability through time under load, resistance, exercise order, cadence, and just kind of hitting it differently every few workouts. And so far, it's been pretty good. So far, it's extremely challenging. I still feel like I've been run over by a truck, and even due to a 3-week layoff, I haven't necessarily gained any weight, but I haven't lost any. So what it seems to be doing is at least maintaining, but my strength and especially my cardiovascular endurance seems to be outstanding. And my ability to tolerate muscle burn and discomfort seems to be continuously improving.
Okay, cool. So thanks for going through that. So I just want to kind of summarize for the listeners. So starting off with the leg exercises, as you mentioned there, leg extension, leg curl, leg press, with a breakdown set, and then you move on to the upper body stuff. Can you just elaborate on specifically what if you do decide to isolate bicep or tricep and abdominals, what are your go-to exercises for those?
When it comes to biceps, what I prefer doing now, as I mentioned earlier, I've been having something going on with my biceps tendon on the right arm, and I think it was due to the my Nautilus and other preacher curl machines, because it seems that when you're contracting against a fixed bar, it seems it kind of works against the path of motion of your biceps and the carrying angle. And what I found is under a meaningful level of resistance, it tends to cause problems in the biceps tendon. I've had a couple clients who experience this as well, and myself. So if I'm going to use a preacher curl machine, I've noticed that using a lighter weight and maybe going a longer time under load is a better idea, just to kind of protect the biceps tendons. But what I prefer to do is just a standing dumbbell curl, dumbbell each arm, making sure to keep tension on the biceps at all time, about a 5-second up, 5-second down cadence, contracting hard at the top, not fully extending the elbow, and with a relatively light weight, I would say about 20 to 25 pounds, just doing them slowly and focus on contracting the muscle as hard as possible. So what that is done in accommodating for the natural carrying angle of the biceps, which I found is extremely important. For myself in particular, or maybe that could have been, something to do with the biceps tendons, but what I try to do is create exercises that accommodate the carrying angle, because these machines do so, but they don't do so very well. So I find using dumbbells, it's the best approach to do that. And when I do exercises with dumbbells for my biceps, accommodating the carrying angle, I have less soreness and irritation of the biceps tendons. So it's normally one additional set going to failure, about 20, 25 pound dumbbells with just a basic dumbbell curl.
Cool. Okay. And didn't hear you mention about what you focus on for the abdominals, the abdominal exercises.
The abdominals, Nautilus crunch machine. Basically, that's it. I don't do them that often. When you have visible abs, you tend not to really care.
Yeah.
But it seems that the people who don't have visible abs can't get enough abdominal exercises. But I may do an abdominal exercise every 4th or 5th workout. I think they're strong enough to accommodate the rest of my training. And I could be completely naive, but I don't find it necessary to really concentrate too much on working them, honestly, because I feel they get a significant amount of stimulation through the other exercises.
Yeah. I mean, I'm the same way, and obviously, like, you get a lot of people that believe in spot reduction and think they can burn the fat off their abs, and or even worse, they just think that they need to work their abs in order to get them to show. But reality is, you need to lose the fat, and that alone will get you visible abs, basically.
Well, yeah, exactly. I tell all my clients that, it's, when I do a consultation, usually end with the abs, and I tell them, I say, now this is the abdominal machine, and the purpose of this machine is to strengthen the muscles in your midsection, your abdominals, your lower back. This machine will do absolutely nothing towards changing the appearance of your midsection. Keep that in mind. I tell them that in the beginning. I said, we all have abs. They look a certain way. It's one muscle separated by connective tissue. The only reason you cannot see them is because something is covering them. Now, and then I get into explaining the diet with them in order to reduce fat around the midsection to see their abs. But I try really hard, and it's funny because I can't believe, and I was commenting on some sort of men's fitness thing on Facebook today about 8-minute abs, and everybody's talking about, I could do this. I want abs. I want this. I was thinking, how is this not common knowledge yet that abdominal exercises don't really affect the appearance of your abs? But again, there's still a massive amount of people who believe this. But I make sure to tell people this right off the bat so they don't get the wrong idea.
Yeah, no, it's really important. Okay, it's really interesting. So you have a much more kind of freestyle approach to your training, and it reminds me of I think a blog post that Skylar put up a while ago about not counting anymore, not measuring and counting time under load or stuff like that. And I think James Steele has said a similar thing. And obviously, both of those guys have been training for many years, and they're very knowledgeable and very advanced. So I appreciate that. For me personally, where I struggle is if I don't count and measure progress, I can't summon the motivation to give it everything when I work out. So I just will probably stop just short of failure unless I have that motivation. Do you not have that issue then, I assume?
No, I don't. And what I do is I chase the muscular discomfort and make it as uncomfortable as I possibly can. And for some reason, I'm just motivated to feel that. So I never kind of lack the motivation in order to get an effective stimulus. And, and I can tell because if, at the end of the exercise, I feel like, garbage, then I've done it correctly. So I haven't really found the need to find other ways to motivate myself to get to muscular failure, rather than I know I need to get there and I want to get there as effectively and have the most brutal feeling after the exercise as possible.
And as you said, your frequency there is kind of once a week, but it can vary. So sometimes it could be like if you've worked out and 3 or 4 days later you feel good and you feel like working out, you might work out again. But typically it's sort of once a week. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, typically, because I just don't believe your body works on that on a week to week schedule. So when people say once a week, I mean, once every 7 days or once a week works with our scheduling, the way our scheduling works, but your body doesn't necessarily. So, I mean, since I've got the equipment sitting right in front of me, if I feel that I have the energy and the motivation to train, then I will. And there will be plenty of days that pass where I don't. So I think the variability in frequency is a good thing because, again, if you were to look at biology and the scenarios where your body would experience this level of muscular fatigue, it wouldn't be every 7 days. It could be 2 days in a row. It could, be 2 weeks later. It could be every third day. So I think varying that signal is very important just from a biological or evolutionary standpoint. So what I try to do is sort of look at, because I'm kind of a big evolution nerd. So I kind of, and biology nerd. So I kind of think of how this would happen over the course of evolution and in the wild and try to sort of mimic that. So, I don't think many organisms are on a set schedule with where they experience, complete fast twitch muscle fatigue and glucose drainage, on a week-to-week basis. So I just let it vary. And same with time under load too. I mean, the time under loads can be different too. I mean, your body's going to, I also believe that if you're using a particular time under load, I think your nervous system will adapt to that. And of course, it's going to try to not produce the expensive adaptation. So I like to vary that too. But as far as exercises go, I don't think there needs to be a lot of variation in exercise. I think the way you perform the exercise can vary many different ways. But I think a few basic, very well-designed machines or dumbbell exercises are really all you need. And that's what I utilize here.
Clearly, in the recent episodes, I've had a few discussions about increasing frequency. And there's some literature that I discussed with James Steele about this, where he felt that for advanced trainees, or say he felt, the research suggested that for advanced trainees, working out more frequently may increase muscular hypertrophy. And obviously this is kind of very counter to, and I straight away I think of like Dr. Doug McGuff. His advice is to become superhuman. Remember that you're only human, or realize that you're only human. Look after your biology, sleep, stress. Don't work out too much. And he's quite. I wouldn't say he's dogmatic about once a week at all, but he definitely moves towards that side of the continuum. So just curious, what have you read that literature? Have you listened to those episodes? What do you think about this debate about frequency?
I do not disagree with increasing frequency, but at the same time, I believe you need to reduce volume if you're going to do that. Because if it's going to take, and I've experienced this personally as well. I can do a higher frequency, but when I participate in a higher frequency, I need to reduce volume, because if it were to be like a three-way split, by the end of the week I would feel like crap, because you are, each time you work out, your body has to repair the damage, use a huge amount of resources in order to recover and grow. And if you're doing a high volume workout, it's going to be more difficult to do that multiple times a week than if you were to kind of focus on a muscle group. So I think like an anterior and a posterior day and then a leg day would be an okay higher frequency workout. But at the same time, you're still only hitting those muscle groups once a week. So I think in the beginning, people could see results from a higher frequency full body workout, but I think that's going to fade away over time, because again, people, as time goes on, people are able to train harder, it seems, and then their recovery ability is pretty much fixed. So when it comes to higher frequency, I think a split routine, could be effective in improving muscular hypertrophy rather than once a week. But at the same time, you're still training each muscle group once a week. So it's kind of like take your pick. That's entirely my opinion. But I personally, for the most part, I'd kind of rather hit it all at once and then wait a few days rather than, make 3 different workouts, even though the workouts would be relatively short. But I can't remember, was this particular research, was it a full body routine multiple times a week?
I think it was. Now, I can't recall the detail now. I read it a while ago, but I remember the recommendations being and this is what James suggested, was 2 to 4 full body workouts per week. However, I will, it's not being fair on James to just leave him with that. James did also say that it may make, very, very little difference, if any, in terms of gains.
And that's my next question. How much of a difference is this really going to make? If it's very marginal, then 2 scenarios. If it's very marginal, then do it if you enjoy training, and don't do it if you don't enjoy training. So I guess it kind of comes down to that. In certain scenarios in life would allow that to happen. So, I mean, if you got the time and it's going to make a little bit of difference and you want to go after it, go after it. But I wouldn't obsess over the people who are trying to maximize muscle hypertrophy. I don't know if I would call that the holy grail to maximizing muscular hypertrophy. I think, and again, the people who were training in this experiment probably don't train as hard as I do, or James Steele or James Fisher. You know what I mean? So I think when you're training at an experienced level of intensity, I think you would almost certainly overtrain in just a matter of a couple weeks. Maybe in the beginning it would help, but I can't imagine that wouldn't lead to overtraining. Training as intense as proper high intensity training calls for.
And similar to you, like I'm very, I think it'd be correct in saying glycolytic, in that I'm not built like you, but I feel incredibly exhausted after a proper high intensity training workout. Regardless of the makeup, whether it's body weight machines, whatever, as long as I've gone, pushed to failure, I'm going to be very exhausted. And like you're saying, it depletes my resources, and it depletes the energy that I have for that day and probably the next day for other activities. So I do think, for me personally, and for a lot of people, that they're better served training much less frequently, just from an overall quality of life perspective.
Yeah, I do too, because I think the accumulation of stress over time, especially, a lot of people have a lot of things they're dealing with. And, plenty of my clients, they come in ranting and raving about work. I mean, that sort of stress accumulated with additional exercise stress multiple days a week, I feel it's just going to make everything a little harder to recover from. So, and I think like the whole higher frequency split routine thing, I think that would be a great idea for a competitive bodybuilder. But again, most of the time we're not dealing with competitive bodybuilders. We're dealing just with regular people who have kids, things that they need to do, other obligations, and to make sacrifices towards spending time with their family or other obligations for the sake of a teeny bit of muscle hypertrophy, I think is just ridiculous. So I would suggest to them just to ignore it and stick with once a week. But again, if the equipment's sitting in front of you like it is for me, I mean, yeah, you give it a whirl, but I don't think it's going to make that huge of a difference, honestly.
So going back to your change up in terms of your training protocol and your frequency, have you experienced any downside from the drop in frequency and I suppose overall volume?
The only downside I've experienced is that the more mental ability to handle the discomfort kind of goes away. So in other words, the workout sucks more the less you do it. So I noticed when I was doing a more frequent routine, it really didn't. It wasn't all that brutal, and it wasn't all that uncomfortable. But when I backed it down to 7 to 10 days, I felt much more fatigued afterwards. And during the workout, I just didn't want to do it. And I think it has something to do with just getting used to, if you're continuously introduced to a particular stress, your body is going to find ways to cope with it, mentally and physically. And, it's just like being, living in a very cold climate or a warm climate. You're better able to handle the discomfort. And I think the same is true when it comes to training. So if you're training frequently, you may not dislike it as much as if you were doing it infrequently. But that was, that was noticeable. It was a significant difference because I would, be by the third machine. I'd be like, holy shit, I really don't want to do this anymore. And I've never felt that before. I used to like to train, but in terms of changes in strength and size, it did not change at all. Just my, I guess, ability or my tolerance of the workout waned a little bit.
That's interesting. It's funny, you reminded me, I was working out yesterday, and I'm still doing kind of a Project Kratos influence workout, but I'm making the exercises much more challenging. And I was like, yeah, I'm looking forward to working out. And then I'm like mid chin up and I'm thinking to myself, why was I looking forward to this? This is horrible.
Yeah,
which is
exactly.
I know what you mean. Like when you're training frequently, I think also there's like you say, you're getting used to that stress, but perhaps it's also the specific skill training. If you're doing it regularly, you're being able to cope with that discomfort. Maybe it's because it's not as challenging. I don't know if that's also potentially true.
Yeah, and I think I've noticed the same with my clients too. I mean, they would go away for a week or two on vacation because it's summer, of course, and they would come back and they say, I feel so weak. And I would look at their chart and I would say, well, you've gotten stronger, so you're not weaker. And then I would explain to them, I believe that, there's a connection between the amount of time you take off and your tolerance for the workout. So they would come back feeling weak, feeling awful, but they would be stronger. And I'm experiencing the same thing personally.
Interesting. So let's go into that a little bit. So have you experienced any reduction in lean mass at all from the changes?
No, not at all. So I kind of did it as an experiment. I mean, I was running low on time, and it's very tough to, train people all day. And then before I leave at like 8:30 p.m., train myself. I just want to get home. So, but I saw it as an opportunity to do a little experiment as well. And so far my weight has not changed at all. I look the same. I mean, I've looked the same for the past 3 or 4 years. I really haven't changed. I mean, I may change in weight, maybe 3 to 5 pounds every now and then, pretty much based off of how much I'm eating. So I notice if I get really busy and I eat one meal a day, I might lose a little bit of weight, and it's probably just muscle glycogen and maybe some water. But for the most part, it's sticking around the same thing, kind of no matter how frequently or I train or the exercise choices I make. And, I used to, do, deltoid raise for the shoulders, a push down for the triceps, exercises that work the triceps. I would, do a couple different variations of a tricep exercise, like a dip, triceps push down, and maybe 2 variations of a biceps curl. And since dropping those out of my workout, I've noticed absolutely no difference in bicep size. So that just kind of puts the myth to rest that you need to do all these different bicep exercise variations in order to get optimal biceps growth. I don't think that's true at all. I honestly don't think you need a biceps exercise because, I may do them every other workout or every third workout. I think just doing a vertical pulling movement for the lats in a row fatigues the biceps so deeply. And I don't believe that any of these emphasize exercises, ones that emphasize the triceps or the biceps, are even necessary because all the muscles are attached. So they all work together. So I think you're going to fatigue them as a whole, and I think they're going to grow as a whole. I don't think that you can significantly make your biceps or triceps or forearms grow without growing overall significantly. So I think trying to grow as a whole is going to make everything grow and work in the entire body rather than, focusing on, your biceps. I mean, there are some people out there with huge arms and, a small chest and a small back, but they didn't get that way because all they do is train arms. They got that way because of probably long muscles in their bicep. And I'm probably not really paying much attention to the other muscle groups, but I found it less necessary to place emphasis on pretty much the beach muscles, in addition to just regular compound movements.
Nice. So, because I think a lot of people would, certainly, perhaps those that are well versed in high intensity training would have assumed you would stay as you are in terms of lean mass, but or may even increase lean mass, increase strength, changing the protocol to what you're doing now. But probably a lot of people that aren't that familiar with this type of training and, really how resistance training affects the body, would think, oh no, there's no way he's going to keep up his gains. He's definitely going to lose muscle mass. So what you're saying there is that you haven't really lost anything at all. And it's going pretty well from what you're saying.
Yeah, exactly. And, I'm going to keep training this way with this type of frequency and volume just because of what the time I have. And, maybe in the future I'll switch it up again. I think switching up switching it up for novelty and just to enjoy the workout is important as well. So you know, somewhat enjoy training. But so far, I mean, not a single change has happened. It's been long enough. I've been doing this for about 8 weeks, so it's safe to say that reducing the frequency and reducing the volume is not going to make you any weaker or smaller.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think that's just really important to underscore. Like, I think people would think that you might lose something, you might lose some lean mass or something like that, but I mean, maybe 8 weeks, maybe you need to do it, maybe you need to look after 6 months to really get a good view on how this has affected your body composition. But I suspect that you will probably remain the same, if not slightly improve. And just on that, how do you kind of, I know you said like you don't really track things, you kind of go on instincts, you kind of freestyle to an extent. So how do you like know if you are getting stronger or not on certain exercises? How do you track that?
Well, I mean, I'm using very basic equipment, so I do remember what weight I was able to use. So, I know what I'm using on the chest press. I know what I'm using on the overhead press. And sometimes, and I will just gradually increase it. I will just wing it. But the way I look at it is, I believe if you're training your muscles very hard, to failure, fatiguing them very deeply, especially at my stage, I don't think you're going to see a whole lot of trackable progress. So, I mean, even if I'm doing time under load, it may improve over the course of 2 weeks, 3 weeks. And personally, I'm just not interested in it. I believe just if I keep introducing my body to the stimulus, I think it's going to improve. And I just don't have any interest in tracking it because, I'm already at a point where I'm satisfied with my muscularity, my strength, and I really don't have any particular goals in mind. And I think other people who, are on a fitness journey, I guess, to enhance their lean body mass, reduce body fat, and get stronger, I think it's probably more important to them. But once you've kind of reached where you feel comfortable, I think the importance of tracking progress kind of goes away. So yeah, I completely freestyle it and just try to train the muscles really, really hard, and they're going to respond. And because I've been doing it long enough to know what an effective stimulus feels like, so I just chase that feeling and that stimulus, and I think everything else is going to just kind of take care of itself.
Did I hear you right earlier when you said some days you might only eat one meal a day?
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that?
I mean, sometimes I just get, I get very busy and I'll only end up eating dinner. And I think that's I think that's healthy for the body too, because, many organisms, omnivores, animals, they're not eating 3 meals a day. So I think, a long fast like that, and even though an active fast, or I'm not really thinking about it, I think it's going to benefit your metabolism. It's going to help with, insulin sensitivity. Not that I could really use much more of an improvement in that area, but yeah, if I'm sometimes I eat 1 meal a day, I don't worry that I'm going to lose muscle mass because, my body's ability to absorb glycogen is probably through the damn roof. So when I eat that meal, my muscles are going to soak it all up anyway and use it and then continue normal eating anyway. So yeah, even an unconscious fast like that, yeah, it happens sometimes, and I don't worry about it. I really don't follow the traditional bodybuilding dogma that you need to eat every 2 hours. I think that's just ridiculous bullshit. And because I've proven it wrong. I've got acquaintances who are bodybuilding and they're eating 2 meals a day or a meal every 2 or 3 hours, slamming protein, slamming all the supplements, and don't look nearly as good as I am. So I don't think there's too much of a connection between, over nutrition and muscle growth, because, calories, protein, they don't stimulate muscle growth. Exercise stimulates muscle growth. So people have the idea kind of backwards that, overfeeding their muscles and overfeeding their body and providing their muscles with excessive amounts of protein is going to somehow stimulate them to grow, but it's not. It just needs to be available for when the muscle decides to grow after you stimulated it. So it's very backwards thinking, and I never, over the past few years, I didn't believe it was true, but just personally, I've kind of proven to myself that that's also not true, because if I don't eat 200 grams of protein a day, I don't lose any strength, I don't lose any muscle. So I really don't think that's necessary. I think everything is exaggerated for what you actually need. And I think it's due to the fact that there are a lot of people with average genetics out there just trying to push the needle past where it's not able to go, and trying all these different things and kind of concluding that that's the missing piece of the puzzle, when the missing piece of the puzzle is most likely just their genetics. So for the most part, I'm pretty much anti everything bodybuilders do, honestly.
Well said. You remind me of something Ted Naiman said to me. He was like, I feel like strength training, like muscle building is exclusively strength training and fat loss is exclusively diet.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, the only way I could see exercise helping fat loss is improvements in insulin sensitivity, which a good diet can do as well. So I always tell my clients, you can lose weight watching Netflix if you ate properly. The point of exercising is to increase or maintain lean body mass and, influence calorie partitioning and speed up improvements in insulin sensitivity, which are all going to contribute to a faster weight loss and sustainable weight loss. But when it comes to losing weight, you just got to eat differently, really. Yeah. This all just helps it and makes it sustainable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And obviously that's an oversimplistic model, which I said, and there are nuances, and both can contribute to the other. But no, so what would for someone who's listening to this, someone who's like, let's say, a hard gainer, someone who's quite ectomorphic, wants to gain muscle mass, wants to kind of figure out how they can do that, what would you say to them from a nutritional point of view?
From a nutritional point of view, I would probably say, so if you're a hard gainer, you can get away with eating foods with a higher glycemic load and higher calorie foods. And I think they may be useful to a hard gainer, but I would still recommend, 80 to 90% of your food intake come from natural whole food sources, things you can find in the woods, because our metabolism evolved over the course of 2 million years based off of what we could find in the woods. So keep most of it centered around that. And if, I think extra calories are going to help with weight gain. I don't think it's necessary for muscular growth, but I think it can help. So for a hard gainer or a thin individual where fat accumulation probably isn't going to be a problem, I think that they can get away with eating some crappier food to make up for the extra calories. And, but for the most part, sticking with the whole natural foods for about 80 to 90% of the diet. But I wouldn't obsess over it either. They also have to look at, the training side of the equation, because a lot of the hard gainers are chronically overtrained because they're just trying to push the needle past, what their body's able to even recover and adapt from, thinking that more is better. So whenever it comes to, whenever I have people ask me about, increasing muscularity in a particular muscle group, I just tell them to hit it harder and hit it less frequently, make it, and a lot of the times they won't believe me or even follow my advice, but shit, I do it and it works. But, I think it depends on every individual. I mean, if you're an ectomorph and you're a hard gainer, throw some Pop-Tarts in there, get 400 extra. I think there's 200 calories in a Pop-Tart. Jesus. And if you need a little extra calories, throw some Pop-Tarts in there. I've done that at times, if I was like, oh shit, I didn't need any calories for the day, let me get some Pop-Tarts, just, get things moving here.
Jay, I'm not sure if that's great advice.
I don't, but I think for the ectomorphic individual who's probably not going to put on a lot of body fat, I really don't see a huge problem with it. 10% of the time. Sure. Most of the time, eat whole natural foods. The other 10%, kind of wing it. I don't think, sticking to a very, very structured diet plan is a great idea, because eventually you're going to lose your mind and you're going to stop following it. So what I tell my own clients is just eat the types of foods you would find in the woods, and stay away from the packaged stuff. Whether you're a hard gainer or you can gain muscle easily, in the long run that's going to benefit you. But I'm just not really sure the calorie surplus is. I don't know if the evidence is there that it's necessary, so I don't even know if I recommend a calorie surplus. I think if you're training the muscles hard enough, they're going to grow, and that's that.
Interesting. So when you say in the woods, we're talking plants and animals, pretty much for the most part.
Yeah. Plants and animals, mostly animals. Fat that comes with the animal. Some green vegetables of sorts, a little bit of fruit if you enjoy it, some nuts here and there. Just keep it very, very simple. I mean, our metabolisms didn't really evolve off of that much variety. I mean, we all feel we need variety because we're bored, but I think, and I tell a lot of my clients too, I mean, a diet got to give them, it's not going to have a whole lot of variety. It's going to be pretty damn simple, but I think keeping it simple over the course of a long period of time, you kind of get used to it, and then you're going to reap the health benefits of that forever, because you're just not going to really want to go back to eating the way, a traditional Western diet looks. Well, that's what's happened for me, at least.
Yeah, same. Okay, so recently I was talking to Drew Bay with regard to cultivating the will and motivation to train to momentary muscular failure, doing body weight training. A lot of people struggle to go to one set to failure in that specific modality. And I'm just curious, before you work out, do you have any pre-workout rituals, or do you do any sort of visualization or anything like that to get you in the zone?
No, not really, actually. I just there's not much thought that goes on. I set the weight, I get on there, and a lot of times I train with my eyes closed, which I think could make you pretty dizzy. But what I try to do is I try to almost meditate when I train, and I'm not focused on anything to motivate me. I'm not, acting like The Rock. I don't have to say all this crazy shit in order to get motivated. I just know what needs to be done, and I get in there and I just do it, because I mean, what more do you need to say? Just get in there, do it. It's not going to last that long. It's going to be uncomfortable, but very, very briefly. So what I do is I just very calmly get into the exercise and just focus on contracting the muscle groups that I'm looking to emphasize working at the moment. And when it starts to get comfortable, I just chase the discomfort until, and I think that sort of thing comes with experience. I mean, someone doing this for the first time, they're not going to have that. It's going to take them a while to be able to learn how to find the discomfort. And what I tell my clients is find the discomfort and embrace the suck. That's what I tell them. It's going to suck. Embrace the suck. So find the suck, embrace it. It's going to be very short-lived. The amount of extreme discomfort really only lasts, 15 to 20 seconds towards the end of the set. And, I guess it just takes some repetition and some relatively consistent exposure to that in order to get used to it. I mean, there are some people, I've had some clients who cannot tolerate any at all. I had a new client this week who came in, and I put her on the leg press just as a consultation. And as soon as she felt any sort of discomfort, she literally got off the machine and walked away. And I was like, that's excuse me, miss, that is not how this works here. This is not what we do. You have to continue to the set until I instruct you, otherwise, or until you reach muscle failure. And she was like, that's not for me. I told her I wasn't, I told her if she couldn't do that, then we couldn't work together. I wasn't going to, I've got too many people wanting to train in order to try to teach someone to just deal with a little bit of muscular discomfort. And you could tell, I mean, this was a type of client who didn't really want to work for what she wanted. She kind of wanted someone to hand it to her and do it for her. So she thought just by coming here, that was going to be enough, and it was just going to happen. But I spent some time explaining to her that, I can show her the water, but I cannot make her drink it, and that she has to follow the protocol as I instruct, or she's going to see very little progress, and I probably won't end up training her because it will drive me fucking crazy. So I'm kind of picky about people like that, and I can be at this point. I mean, if someone's gonna, just act like an idiot and not take it seriously, I'm not going to train them. I like this too much and take a lot of pride in high intensity training. So I'm not going to let people come in and make a mockery of it like she did. So needless to say, she's not coming back.
So I had a listener who is struggling with developing grip strength. They're finding that they can't complete their workout and properly reach failure on all of their musculature because their grip is giving way. What advice might you give to someone in that position who needs to improve their grip strength to get a better overall workout?
Well, there are a couple things. What I would recommend, well, based on their frequency, so they're training twice a week, I would recommend using wrist wraps for one of the workouts and the following workout not using them. So use the wrist wraps to take, or hooks, to take some tension off of the forearms and allow the other muscle groups in your back to receive the stimulus they need. But then the next workout, go through the same exercises without the assistance of the hooks in order to give your forearms the stimulus they need. Their forearms are probably overtrained. So using the hooks is going to allow them additional rest time. But also there could be, another piece of that could be maybe some direct work for forearms. My favorite forearm exercise is a hammer strength gripper. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those. It's a plate loaded machine, and it's pretty much like one of those hand gripper squeezing tools that, executives have at their desk. And it's a plate loaded machine, and it works the forearms tremendously. So I would do that every few workouts or so, just for additional forearm strength. But what I found with my own clients is using the hooks every other workout tends to allow their forearms to rest a little bit and then catch up over time.
Yeah, because I personally haven't really struggled with this, and I feel like your grip will improve over time, especially with something like the pull down, where you get to a point where you can cope with that extra strain on the forearms. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it could also have to do with how they're gripping the equipment. You don't want to squeeze the hell out of it, and a lot of people do that. What you want to do is kind of hook your fingers over the top of the handle on a pull down or a row, and wrap your thumb around. But you want your fingers to act as hooks. You don't want to squeeze it hard, because if you're squeezing the crap out of it, you're going to recruit a lot more muscle in your forearms and probably fatigue them more quickly. So when I put people on my machines for the first time, I instruct them on how to properly grip the handle. And once I do that, their forearm stops dying out. Sometimes if they decide to do their own thing and they grip it like an idiot and squeeze the hell out of it, I'll notice that they'll have to adjust their grip and they'll say their grip is dying. But as long as you're gripping it properly, I think that makes a huge difference, which is just simply wrapping your four fingers around the handle and then your thumb, and using them more as hooks rather than squeezing the handle as you perform the exercise.
Interesting. Do you engage in any kind of non-high intensity training exercise modalities for health or recreation outside of this?
I walk my dog, and that's about it. No, I'm a stickler, man. I hate cardio. I hate running. I just find all that shit's unnecessary unless you need to do it for a particular reason or you enjoy it. But I used to play basketball in the winter. But as of late, or a flag football league, but as of late, no, the only exercise I get is just, my regular high intensity training routine. I really don't desire to do anything else. I've become kind of lazy, honestly. I just kind of want to do whatever training I need to do and then just kind of relax the most of the time, because I'm getting to the point where I'm overworked a little.
Yeah. I can hear your dog as he's playing around.
Oh, yeah, he's driving me absolutely crazy.
No worries. Add some interesting background ambience.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting question. So do you feel like if someone's desk bound, right, and they've got pretty poor posture, I've certainly found, I don't know if you have actually, since you've been, well, actually that being said, you're upstanding training clients quite a lot of the time. But I've certainly experienced it where you could be doing high intensity training once or twice a week, but if you're sat at a desk and you haven't got great posture, you're going to have problems, you're going to have pain. So what do you think about that, and how do you address that, if at all, with some of your clients?
Well, what I try to get them to do is, if they're only high intensity training once or twice a week, there are a couple things. I suggest that they get out there and walk, do something somewhat active, and a couple reasons just to use their body, get the blood flowing. And another thing is, when you are out walking, that is time that you spend not eating. So distracting themselves from snacking or eating crappy food is going to help them over time as well. So I try to get clients to do walking or any sort of other, light physical activity for that reason. But as far as posture goes, I mean, it's tough. If you're sitting at a desk all day, your shoulders are rolled forward, you're in spinal flexion for hours. I mean, it's very hard to avoid those positions for a long period of time. Maybe standing at your desk rather than sitting. There are. I do work with some back extension exercises just with my pull down machine here in order to help that lower back issue. But I believe a lot of the postural problems are due to muscle weakness and muscle atrophy too. So I believe that simply, training the body as a whole is going to strengthen the muscles responsible for keeping your body in good posture, including the lower back. So what I found for the most part is a lot of my clients, it tends to improve on its own over time. But as far as like little hacks towards improving it, I'm not really sure. I just think it's got a lot to do with, muscle atrophy over a long period of time.
Interesting. So in summary, it's like, one should be strength training once or twice a week, ideally in the format we've been talking about, in order to prevent those muscles from atrophying and obviously strengthening those muscles. But then also one thing you said there, which I think is important, is varying the position. I think regardless of training, if you're stuck in spinal flexion all day long for an 8-hour block, you're going to have issues. So I've just literally purchased a standing desk. It's called a Lavolta, and it was like £15, relatively cheap. And what I tend to do is I tend to vary. So right now I'm standing talking to you. I'll work some of the day stood up, and then I'll work some of the day sat down. And sometimes I'll even lie on the bed on my front, and I'll work like that. So I'll constantly vary my body position, and also try to move and walk in between that as much as I can.
Yeah, I think just being conscious of it, and it's another thing is try to prevent your neck from constantly looking down. And it seems that a lot of positions, I mean, if you're at a standing desk, you can keep your head relatively straight, but I think that's a huge problem too with sitting down at a desk, is your neck hanging all day. And but again, if you're spending the whole day standing, it's probably not going to be good on your knees. So I mean, your knee is designed to lock out in order to take tension off your muscles, but there's some tissues in there that aren't, especially as you get older, they're not going to tolerate you standing all day. So I think that varying it, sitting a little bit, standing a little bit, that sort of thing. I mean, our species, I don't think we are all that crazy active or supposed to be. So I don't think you need to literally have a walking desk like some people do. I think that's just kind of stupid. But I think varying the position from, a sit to a stand, just kind of like how our species has done for the past few million years. I mean, is going to be fine. But, obviously sitting at it. But the problem is, these people sit at a desk. A lot of people sit at a desk for 8 hours and they go home and they sit on the couch for another 6, 7, or 8. So, I mean, is it the work, or is it, is it what's happening at work, or is it what's happening at home, or a combination of the two? I think those who, if they sit during the day and then they do participate in physical activity and proper strength training, I think that they would take care of themselves over time.
Good stuff. So going back to the subject of, I guess, diet and fat loss quickly, one of the listeners asked, it sounds like they've made some progress in losing fat, but they've got one last stubborn bit they're trying to lose. Curious, when faced with that type of question, what do you tend to advise people do?
Well, what I would do is I would ask them what their current diet approach is. So a lot of times if you stick to a very structured diet plan, which is probably, low glycemic load or lower insulin, low carbohydrate approach, I think it's beneficial to throw in cheat meals, because what the research suggests is that a high carbohydrate cheat meal or high glucose cheat meal causes a spike in leptin, which is the hormone that tells your body to stop eating and start burning fat. So I think what I do with my own clients is, I recommend a cheat meal every few days. Not something crazy, not going overboard like eating a whole cake or a whole pizza or something like that, but just a high glucose meal in order to cause a release in leptin, which is going to help that whole thing go. Bodybuilders have known this intuitively for a long time, that the cheat meals somehow, get you over a fat loss plateau, or they help move fat loss along a little faster. And now it seems the research is showing that it's got to do with the leptin release when you introduce it also shows that it helps kind of influence lipolysis as well, even though it's kind of satiating you. But it seems that it has an effect on lipolysis. So I would recommend just, introducing a cheat meal here and there, and, just keep chipping away at it. It's unfortunately, some people, they don't have the genetics to have a ripped six pack. I mean, that's just the way it is. I mean, there are some people who will never get that. And maybe just accepting that over time, that, you've developed your physique to the best your genetics will allow, and to stop obsessing over the last little bit around your midsection, because, it's perfectly normal to have that. And unfortunately, we're exposed to a bunch of crap out there that makes us think that, you're less of a person if you don't have a ripped six pack, or you're fat, or you're lazy, or this or that. But I think we should stop placing so much importance on our aesthetics, and just more on the health aspects of eating healthy and exercising. So, I would recommend giving cheat meals a shot, but if it doesn't work, just keep chipping away at it. And if you never get that ripped six pack, who cares? You're all right.
Good advice. And it reminds me when John Little said, "Why are we judging everyone based on the size of their arm?"
Yeah,
guys
exactly.
Obsessed with the pursuit of 20-inch biceps.
Who the hell knows?
And it is interesting because you don't really care about what you have. And I'm interested to know if this is the same with you, because you're a real outlier in that you've got your ripped abs, but you've also got, you've got big musculature. You've got well balanced musculature across your whole body, which is so rare. Someone like me, I can get really ripped abs quite easily. But I don't have the overall kind of muscle development that you have in terms of on balance. So for me, it's like, I don't care about the fact that I've got ripped abs because it comes easy. It's like Skylar saying he doesn't care that he can dunk a basketball effortlessly because he's born with it. So the stuff that we're born with, we don't really care about, but it's the things we don't have that we work so hard and sometimes pointlessly trying to pursue, and we can never obtain it. It's weird.
Yeah, and the way I look at, the appearance of your abs, if you're really going to change things you enjoy in life to obtain abdominal or, lean midsection, that isn't going to last for a long time, because if you haven't had it yet, your genetics are working against you. So it's not like you're going to get this ripped six pack and hold it for 20 years. You're going to get this ripped six pack for a few days, and you're going to start accumulating fat to what your body's used to right after. So, is it really worth it? No. People don't look at you like you're more of a better person or more successful, or, some people may find it more attractive, but Jesus Christ, most of the time you got your shirt on, who cares? I've never really cared. When it comes to musculature, of course, as a male, I kind of just wanted a big back, chest, and arms. Didn't really care much for the abs. Luckily, I had good leg development on my own. But but at the end of the day, if I wasn't, super muscular, I probably wouldn't care all that much. But it's hard to say. It's hard to say because I've had it my entire life. But again, we're basing what we want off of what kind of society tells us is desirable. And I forget who says this. it might have been Arthur Jones, or, a muscular body is very rare, which, things that are rare are desirable. So I think, maybe that's why people are chasing it so hard. But at the end of the day, if you have to devote a significant of time and effort to, just a lean midsection, I don't see it. I don't see it worth it at all.
Cool. So how are you, you mentioned obviously you've got this business that's growing really successfully, which is awesome. And if you're listening and you want to learn more about Jay's business and how he's achieved that, I will link to that episode in the show notes for this one. So with that, obviously you're working longer hours. You've already mentioned that you're occasionally eating one meal a day, and your workout has changed in alignment with that, in that you're working out less frequently and trying to obviously do full body workouts. How are you managing in terms of your sleep and things like alcohol consumption and stuff like that?
Well, when it comes to sleep, I do place pretty large amount of importance on sleep. And I forget where I heard this or where I read this, but somebody said, sleep is so important that we haven't evolved out of needing sleep. It's been a long time and we still sleep. So the fact that we haven't evolved to not need sleep means that it's pretty damn important. So I make sure to be, in bed by 10 p.m., regardless of what goes on. On the weekends, it could be a little different. But again, running a new business, I don't do too many leisure activities. I don't really, go out and, drink alcohol that much. I mean, I will enjoy it occasionally on the weekend, but, it's probably got to do with, I've gone through periods of time where I drank a lot with my buddies and I didn't really notice a huge difference. I noticed a little bit of a difference in, how tired I was and mood maybe, but in terms of, physiologically, not much of a difference. But when it comes to sleep, now, if that's not on the ball, I notice a huge difference in mood, huge difference in the way my body feels, even, muscle fullness, that sort of thing tends to kind of, wane. And so that's one thing I've always, made sure to focus on is getting that, 7, 8, 9 hours a night, because it's obviously very, very important. And, there are so many people out there who don't place much importance on sleep and say, oh, I slept 3 hours, 4 hours. But, I try to explain that same thing to me. I mean, if we haven't evolved out of it yet, then it's obviously something very important that we need. So definitely a very important thing.
Do you optimize your sleep environment? Like, do you do things like black out your room? Do you do any of the kind of biohacks? Do you care about that stuff?
What I do is make it very, very cool. And I find it much more comfortable to sleep in a very cool environment. A cool environment, and I always turn on something for some background noise. I find that helps as well, because sometimes silence can be deafening. I have an air purifier that I turn on, but the biggest thing I do is I just make it very cool. It seems me personally, I'm much more well rested in a cool environment than I am in a warm one.
Yeah, I think most people are. A few things that I do, which might be interesting to listeners, is I try to keep the room as dark as possible. I try and sleep naked if I can manage it, but sometimes that's too chilly and not as comfortable. But again, aligns with what you're saying about sleeping better in a cooler environment. We also have one of these things called a Lumi, which is like a light that emits daylight and it wakes you up with light as opposed to an alarm. Which is kind of cool. Yeah, it kind of illuminates over time. So that's really good. So and we don't have any tech apart from that in the room. So no phones, no laptops, none of that. I've got
an enormous window in my bedroom. So the sunlight normally, I'm up before the sunlight anyway, but on the weekends I kind of just let the sunlight wake me up. I find that it's also sort of important based on our biology. Just kind of let the light wake you up. But on a day like today when I'm up very, very early, that's not going to happen. But that sounds like a good investment. I think that might be something I want to look into.
Yeah, I think alarm clocks though are like the worst things.
I know.
I think because I can't remember. I think it was I can't remember the name of the neuroscientist. He's from Oxford, and he was saying that a couple of the worst things we can do for sleep is cleaning your teeth in a brightly lit bathroom right before you go to sleep, because apparently the light, depending on what light you have, suppresses the production of melatonin, which helps you sleep. And the other thing is, if you have an alarm clock, it will interrupt wherever you are in your sleep phase and put you in kind of a fight or flight type situation, which isn't probably a good thing to be experiencing on every single morning. I get that some people are like, well, I have to be up by a certain time, otherwise I'm late for work. And, I have the privilege where, I don't have that type of situation because I'm working for myself. However, my girlfriend does. So she has the Lumi, which uses an artificial light, which is, I guess, better than an alarm clock. So
I've noticed just once you make a habit out of getting up at a certain time, your body wakes itself up anyway. I always, even though I set an alarm, I always wake up before it goes off. And it's just like, my body kind of knows when to get up now. So maybe just a matter of, creating some sort of pattern. Your body's going to adapt to it anyway. And then maybe set an alarm just in case. But, eventually I think you wouldn't even need it. I've never really needed one. I don't know. It might be just me. I'm not really exactly sure why. It could just be, it's just become habitual, waking up at kind of the same time every day. But, I can see how waking up to might kind of set the day off on a bad foot. And that's something I definitely would want to do.
Yeah, apparently there's something to what you just said about how we subconsciously wake up before our alarms because, like you say, the body gets used to waking up at a certain time. The problem is that's when most people should wake up. But what do most people do? They just go back to sleep and then they get woken up by their alarm anyway.
Yeah, I've noticed that as well. I mean, if you wake up, if your eyes open, just get up, because what are you going to do? Try to squeeze an extra 10 to 15 minutes out for what? It's not going to make you feel any better. Just get your ass up, have a little bit more time, drink some coffee, and just get on with it.
Yeah. So you gave me some diet advice. Well, not when we last spoke, when we spoke before that, which was probably a year or two ago. And it was a game changer. It was the sweet potato baked and then fried in Kerrygold butter with some sea salt, which is something I actually haven't done recently very much, but I did it for a long time after we spoke. And that was awesome. So I'm just curious, from a diet point of view, what does your diet look like now? Give us, if you're not doing one of your one meal a day type things, what does a typical snapshot of your day look like from a diet perspective?
Well, I'm really weird, so it hasn't really changed at all. It's been the same thing. I mean, I still, rather than microwaving the sweet potatoes, I boil them because it brings the glycemic index down a little bit. And I still use the Kerrygold grass-fed butter. I'm still eating ground turkey or chicken, eggs in the morning. A lot of times I skip breakfast, though. And I was doing for a while, a 24-hour fast on Sunday, from Sunday to Monday. That I don't do anymore. What I do is I kind of just choose to skip breakfast sometimes because I'm not particularly hungry a lot of time when I wake up. But for the most part, I'm sticking to the same foods because I feel good when I eat those types of foods. And personally, I don't need a lot of variety. I just don't really care. Well, I've actually begun to eat ice cream once in a while. And I'm kind of proud of myself for that. Because every time I go to eat some ice cream, I'm like, oh, it's going to make me feel like shit. I'm going to feel sick. This is pointless. But now I'm trying it's come to the point where I try to kind of vary it and kind of, do what normal people do every now and then. If people want to go get ice cream, I go do it. But, for the most part, 80 to 90% of the time, it's almost exactly as it used to be. And it's probably going to be like that forever. I mean, I just don't care. I eat to live. I don't live to eat. And it will probably always be that way. It could be part of the reason I've been able to maintain a lean physique. But I've gone through periods of time where I ate like shit. My physique stayed the same. So I think, genetics have a lot to do with it as well. When I was in high school, I would eat 4 double cheeseburgers and 4 apple pies from McDonald's every single day, and I was 168 pounds and didn't gain a single pound. So I think it's got a lot to do with genetics, honestly. But I do it for the long-term health benefit, not necessarily for the aesthetic part.
I think this is really important to highlight to listeners is, I encourage you to listen to part 1, guys, because in part 1 you'll also get more into Jay's workout and diet. And to be honest, it hasn't changed that much at all, because this stuff isn't really that complicated. And I think, Jay, if you don't mind me saying, it's like, pretty much the way he looks is almost entirely down to his genetics. Strength training has obviously helped you to develop and optimize your muscle mass, and diet's probably helped you dial in your reduce your body fat even further, perhaps. But it's, how would you elaborate on that? For those that are kind of listening to this, that are kind of like, what is it I'm not doing right in order to get that 5 pounds of muscle that I can't seem to gain, or X, Y, and Z? What advice would you give those people?
Yeah, and I hear this all the time, and to be honest, I mean, people ask me, what do you do to look like that? And I tell them, not much. I mean, I'm not really. I have no secrets. I'm following very basic principles, and fortunately, my genetics are taking care of the rest. I believe the principles I follow are correct, and they do work. But I mean, if I was training 5 to 7 days a week doing the bro split, I probably would look the same. Over the long term, I would most likely be injured and worn down and not in very good shape. But the high intensity protocol makes sense for a long-term sustainable benefit. In terms of short-term aesthetics, I don't think it's going to make a huge difference whether you're doing high intensity training or a high volume approach or whatever, because you're going to find whatever your body can use. But for the people who are frustrated, they've got to realize it's really not entirely up to them. I mean, I've had friends who take massive amounts of steroids and all they do is get fluffy and fat because the genetics just aren't there. And even if they cleaned up their diet and their training, whatever. So, the truth of the matter is, I mean, some people argue against, everything, genetics aren't everything. They're not everything, but they're most of it. They're absolutely most of it. I mean, so, don't get frustrated or obsess over getting that 5 pounds of muscle, because chances are it's probably never going to come. And you're going to waste so much time, so much effort, so much money on bullshit supplements to try to get you there. When, just the fact of the matter is, you've probably maxed out physically what you're going to look like. But continue to do it for the long-term health benefits. The, improved insulin sensitivity, your hormones, your, reduction in systemic inflammation, cholesterol, all those sort of things that are killing people like crazy. This is a direct approach to reducing or minimizing the risk of all of those things. So that's what you want to do it for. The way you look is just a nice benefit if you've got the genetics. So, don't worry about too much. A lot of times people don't really care how you look. And I've had someone message me on Facebook, like, be honest, how many girls do you pull in the club every time you go out? I'm like, dude, none. I don't go do that. so if they're,
they
guys
don't know you're a massive dork.
Yeah. Like assumed I was like, some sort of gigolo who goes out and just like sweeps girls off their feet because of my biceps. It's like, no, they don't, I don't know, they might care, but they might not. But I mean, if you're doing it for that reason, chances are your body is good enough to get your foot in the door when it comes to a female. So, I mean, you don't necessarily, and I mean, maybe a muscular body is, more attractive to some girls, but, a lot of girls also don't really care. So don't obsess over it. I think it's got a lot to do with male insecurity, which is pushed on us, just through what we're exposed to. What we're exposed to in society is a male is supposed to be a certain way. Yeah, I believe a male should be an alpha. I don't believe a male should be a bitch. I think he should be tough. I think he should be assertive, knows what he wants. Relatively strong. But, I mean, you don't need to look like The Rock to feel like a man, okay? So I would suggest just don't worry about it. Do what you keep doing. And try to be more comfortable with yourself, because you're fine.
Yeah, I think another thing to mention is, like, we're not saying like stop trying to improve yourself. I think there's a lot of value to be had in trying new things, trying to change your protocol, trying to put on more muscle, or trying to achieve X, whatever that might be in terms of improving body composition or performance or fill in the blank, but just don't obsess about it. Like aim, it might work for you to aim for that and strive to that and plan for that, but just don't obsess about it, I think is my view and certainly my advice for those listening. Do you agree with that, Joe?
Yeah.
Or do you have a slightly different view?
I do, and I think it might have to do with personality. I mean, there's a lot of people who obsess over making as much money as possible. It's a little bit of a compulsive disorder, and I think it's a compulsive disorder just that we didn't necessarily choose. That was kind of sprung on us. I mean, we live in a very superficial society, and there are societies that don't worry about these sorts of things at all. So, I mean, keep that in mind. Keep in mind that, even the people with the best bodies and the best looks, they're going to fade. And then at the end of the day, we're all on the ground anyway. So just be comfortable with yourself and stop making a fuss over it and just, continue to do it. Never stop doing it. Continue to do it. Continue to have a goal to work towards, because without a goal to work towards, progression is I still believe it's some sort of key to happiness. So continue to work towards it, but just because the long-term result isn't what you ideally wanted doesn't mean you haven't made tremendous amounts of improvement from what you were and what you were in the beginning.
Yeah, well said. What have you changed your mind about regarding high intensity training or exercise in general since we spoke in our part 1, which would have been just over a year ago?
Well, I've changed my mind about range of motion, probably. I don't believe that you need a whole lot of range of motion in an exercise because, the physiology of a muscle contraction shows that when a muscle is in a lengthened position, it's very weak due to myosin and actin overlap. And I think staying in the part of the range of motion where myosin and actin overlap more, sort of in the middle of the range of motion and avoiding full extension or full contraction. I do that now as I train because I believe it's easier on the connective tissue. And I believe that's where you're going to find your most benefit. There are people out there who advocate training the muscle in its weakest positions, which I think is ridiculous. I mean, there may be some sort of nervous system adaptation to doing that, but physiologically, the only reason your muscle is weak is due to the position in the myosin and actin overlap. So, Ben Pekulski, who is a bodybuilder who promotes that, and I go on Instagram and I, talk shit to him all the time. Like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. This bullshit. But they, so you've got people out there working their muscle in a stretched position. Their biceps tendons are just going to burst.
Can you give us an example of that type of exercise so people can just
like a biceps curl? I mean, a biceps curl. There are biceps machines that you can actually change the cam on to place more emphasis in extension. So you're starting with a fully extended bicep, a fully lengthened bicep, and placing most of the tension in its lengthened position, and it gets lighter towards the contracted position. I think that's ridiculous. You'd want to do the opposite of that. You'd want to place resistance where there are more myosin and actin overlap and less where there is less. But there's a company out there called Prime making equipment, which Ben Pekulski promotes, that place tension on weaker parts of the range of motion, claiming that if you can strengthen a muscle in its weakest position, the muscle will become therefore stronger overall, which is not the case. So as time goes on, I'm starting to see less of a need to have a wide range of motion and just kind of stick where you're keeping, the muscle in the joint in a relatively safe position and in a position where it's able to produce the most contractile force, which is somewhere in between full extension and full contraction. So that's one thing I've changed my mind about in the past year, shortening it.
So is there anything else that comes to mind in response to that question?
Let's see. I mean, yeah, I think working out, a lot of HIIT guys have a very systematic approach to training. And I think as I do freestyling it, kind of going with what you feel is also good as well, because your body's going to tell you things. And I think, for instance, my drop sets on the leg press may be completely unnecessary, but since I feel as though I get, a a better fatiguing of the involved muscle groups, I'm going to continue to do it, even if research highly suggests that it's not going to make any difference, and just doing one set to failure is getting most of the benefit. Don't ignore these things. I think if there are things you can do to make your workout a little bit more enjoyable, then do them. So I used to have more of a systematic approach to it, but I think as time goes on and as I get older, I kind of like to do a couple of the things that make it a little bit more enjoyable, and I don't see anything wrong with that.
What's your final piece of advice for people regarding training, high intensity training?
My final advice to people regarding high intensity training is do not go by what muscle and fitness, flex, and muscular development call high intensity training, because it's not. I read an article on Dorian Yates' training, and Dorian Yates is I love Dorian Yates, but his version of high intensity training is bad. So I think, there was an article talking about high intensity training and as if it's just another way, and after reading it, they had everything wrong. It wasn't even close. It wasn't even close to what high intensity training is about. So for people who are wanting to learn more about high intensity training, go to a reputable source. Drew Bay's blog, second to none. If you want to learn about, proper high intensity training, do not go to bodybuilding.com. Do not go to T Nation, because you're just going to come across a bunch of shit and you're going to end up doing it poorly and probably getting yourself hurt. Because if you train like Dorian Yates, you're going to get yourself hurt. That guy was unbelievable. So my final thought is, for those interested, high intensity training, seek out, the experts, Drew Bay, Doug McGuff, Ryan Hall, etc., and stay away from the mainstream bodybuilding magazines and websites and things of that nature.
And what's the best way for people to contact you, find out more about you, Jay, and what you're up to?
Sure. You can visit my website. That's BioFit, BioFitNY, is in the acronym from New York, .com. So it's biofitny.com. Or you can email me anything. I enjoy answering emails, biofitny@gmail.com.
Nice. And for all those listening, to find the show notes, links, and resources for this episode and all episodes, please go to corporatewarrior.org. And until next time, guys, thank you very much for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. Before you head off, head on over to corpwarrior.com to get your free ebook with 6 interview transcripts with some of my top guests, including Dr. Doug McGuff, Drew Bay, and Bill Simone, on how to optimize muscle gain, fat loss, and overall health in an efficient, effective, and sustainable way. These transcripts are not verbatim, deliberately. Instead, they've been transcribed in an easy read format to make it more enjoyable and easier for you to quickly pick out what you need and start getting results. To get your ebook, head on over to corpwarrior.com, that's CORP warrior.com, and enter your email address. Then check your email for an email from me with a confirmation link. Once you click the link, you'll be instantly redirected to a PDF version of the transcripts. This podcast is brought to you by HitUni.com. HitUni.com are a provider of amazing online courses for high-intensity training qualifications. HitUni comes highly recommended by the best in the field, including Body by Science co-author Dr. Doug McGuff, Discover Strength CEO Luke Carlson, and trainer and founder of Bay.com, Drew Bay. It was founded by my friend, author, and longtime personal trainer Simon Shawcross, who's also been a guest on the podcast. Simon has 15 years experience training clients and has supervised over 15,000 high-intensity training workouts. Using knowledge from experts like Skylar Tanner, Dr. James Steele, Dr. Ellington Darden, HitUni is a goldmine for learning everything to do with high-intensity training. The courses are delivered online through the website, where you can learn via a variety of multimedia materials at your own pace. There's online support and a discussion forum where you can share ideas and ask for help. To learn more about high-intensity training and improve my own results, I started their personal trainer course. The content is amazing, the courses are really easy to follow, and each section is organized into bite-sized chunks that give you a real sense of achievement after you complete each one.
I should also mention there is a DIY course. So this is the course for you if you're not necessarily a personal trainer, but you want to learn more about high intensity training and how to implement it for maximum benefit in your own exercise regime. To get your exclusive Corporate Warrior 10% discount on any course you purchase, simply head on over to hituni.com, that's hituni.com, and enter the coupon code CW10, that's CW and the number 10. So again, head on over to hituni.com, pick your course and enter the coupon code CW10 for 10% discount. Thank you for your support.